I'll reiterate to the audience, if we have anybody on in the stream. We have one person on the stream. That's probably no. See, it could be the person in the room who's decided that they're needing to stream me because they're here and they want to see the stream. So we're recording the stream, so you guys can look back on this, and also the externals can look on it. Now, this is our Serious Games course. It is a research-focused course, right? Because you guys are now doing masters. One of the things we start looking at doing is saying we want to look at source material, right? So see what is currently being published and start analyzing it and trying to understand how people do research on games, right? Now, one of the things we do today is just get a feeling for what are the game backgrounds of you guys as a group of students. Now, of course, some of you did my game development course, and so I know you've been kind of dipped in games and it's kind of soaked in for a while. But we have some students who haven't necessarily gone through our game development course. And so we'll do a wee bit of a round-the-table introduction as to your game background and your interest in games. But the main focus of this course is on understanding how you do research on games and why games are used to achieve other purposes, right? Because we're talking serious games, so we're not just saying, can we entertain people, but in trying to achieve something, how do we use the motivator that is games, right? The fact that we have this engagement with playful activity. How do we see that being applied in other areas? Right? So in the course we have a main focus on games for health and games for education, because those tend to be the largest areas where research is actively occurring. They also have an interesting feature which I quite like, where the person benefiting from the game is the person playing the game. Right? So in the games for education, the player is learning interesting things. Right? In games for health, the player is getting healthier. Right? For games for propaganda, right, that's about, I want to achieve something, I want to change the way you think. Not for your benefit, for my benefit, right? So games for propaganda, games for work, where I want you to do more work and I don't want to have to pay you, right? You're not getting benefit, I'm getting benefit, right? So there is another, it's kind of almost two categories of games and serious games. Games where the player is benefiting from playing the game, and where someone else is benefiting from you playing a game, okay? And so sometimes these are kind of categorized, and you see Ian Bogus does the exploitationware, right? So when you're using games to make someone else do something for you, right? Or where I'm going to see the benefit of you doing something and I'm not going to pay you, I'm kind of trying to exploit your engagement with the activity for my ends, right? So we certainly cover both in this course. We don't exclusively go down the happy kumbaya sit around the table kind of activities. We can certainly also discuss propaganda games. Now I have a list, and we'll be putting those into our game of reading and discussion game of papers, right? Papers that you guys will read. You will also present those papers to the class and lead the discussion, right? So this is partly why we've got this round table discussion, is that rather than it just being, get this content off the internet and put it in your brain, right? Because if that was all the paper was, we wouldn't have lectures. I'd just tell you to read a bunch of stuff and I'll have an exam at the end of the year, right? And just, read it whenever you like, just get the content in your brain, it'll be fine, right? But we want you to read and discuss. Now, rather than having me do this and lead the discussion every week, which means I do the majority of the work, we want you to do the majority of the work. Now, this does follow a learning principle, right? Of basically the person who does the work does the learning, right? If you present things, if you teach somebody something, you tend to know it better yourself, right? So if I get you guys to present and lead a discussion, you're more likely to understand that area by having done that extra work to feel comfortable enough to lead a discussion than if we just sit all here passively absorbing, right? Again, this course is not like a movie. This course needs to be like a game where you guys are the players, right? And at the moment, I'm DM, right? And you guys are all the players in my game. But I want to hand that title over, and each week you run your own campaign through learning a bunch of stuff, right? Who will get, well, so the most benefit gains from each of you each week leading the discussion, but hopefully by engaging and you choosing to want to know this stuff, right, and actually finding it interesting, right? So long as we can keep it interesting, then hopefully you'll all benefit from that. But yeah, no, it's not just a play on the I don't want to do any work, so I'm going to make you guys do all the work, right? It's not. That's not my intention. I actually honestly believe you learn more by doing and preparing the stuff yourself, and I think you get better discussions when we're in a round table rather than just that thing, because you guys can see each other and see each other responding and stuff. So we're going to have the first 2 weeks are going to be me, and I'll check with Runa. Runa usually gives the Games for Education talk, but that's often because I'm away doing something. And so I'll just see what his current situation is. But the first couple of weeks are Runa and I presenting. I'll give a presentation on Games for Health, because I go to the Games for Health conference. I've been going for the last 5 years, and I can give a summary of kind of where the Games for Health industry is at. And Runa is focused on the Excited project, which is about improving education, and games and engagement in education is one of the kind of big trends at the moment, gamification of education. So we usually give those two in the first weeks, and we give you papers to read and review, and Runa and I will lead those discussions to show you what we mean by leading the discussion, right? So in 3 weeks' time, we then start handing over to you guys to start presenting, right, and leading discussions. Now, the way we did this last year, or for the last couple of years, we've actually used 2 students per session, and we give you 2 papers to read and review, right? And so one of you takes one paper and the other takes the other paper, and you act as your own counter, right? So one person presents and then the other person interrogates on the failings of that paper, right? So one person kind of presents the paper as, this is a good paper, this is why it's a good paper, and the other person goes, right, having had the quick overview, they then lead the counter to it, saying, okay, so it's missing, it's got a small sample size, and they draw far too many conclusions from the small number of people they had. All the people they were using wore chickens on their heads or something, right? Whatever the fault is of the paper, you have someone who is there to kind of interrogate and be the opponent, right? So we have 2 people who are working on the same couple of papers. Now, everybody needs to read those papers so they can be part of that discussion. The people leading the discussion should be reading some of the other material around those papers, right? So you can read some of the stuff you find interesting that they cite, right? Where you go and say, oh, they explain this method by just pointing to this reference paper. I don't understand how that method works, so I'll go and read that reference paper to understand that method, right? So as the leader of the discussion, you need to dig deeper, right? And be able to answer some of those questions. As the interrogator, you also perhaps want to read some of the background and some of the explanations. You can also look forward in the reference literature and say, okay, who has cited this paper? Where has the future work gone? Right? Now, what I've generally tried to do is pick papers in the last 2 or 3 years, right? So I try and keep them relatively recent. but even papers published a year or two ago may well have some more recent citations on them, right? And so you can look at where has it gone from when that was published. And certainly if you, we aren't necessarily as interested in trying to get all that content through to you. It's more about understanding the methodologies of doing this research. If you wanted to do your own research, looking at these papers, how would you do research in this area, right? So the exact details of what that individual did isn't what you should necessarily remember in 20 years' time, right? But you should be understanding the processes people were using, the way in which they justify their results, the way in which they designed their study, right? So it's that research methodology as well as content, right? So you kind of have to understand some of the general stuff and some of what's considered relevant and interesting in the field of serious games, as well as understanding how to do research. So to that end, we'll be putting people into peers in terms of research. You don't have to do your research together at all. You can collaborate and discuss things beforehand if you like, or not. That's entirely up to you guys how you best learn. And then, so through the rest of the weeks, what we'll do is we'll have those presentations and discussions. And so we have a group of 15, which doesn't fit evenly, but we'll see how we can manage that. But yeah, if we have one person presenting, I will be the opponent. It will be fine. Though, yeah, I remember I had Miriam in this class who was doing her PhD. And so, yes, I decided I would be the opponent for her because, you know, I was more critical than most of you guys seem to be when you're trying to be critical. But, so yeah, so we'll pair you up. We have from now until the 4th of May to complete this course, right? Because that's when lectures end for these subjects. We have an oral exam at the end of the course, and I have to actually check to see if they've got the balance there with the doing the project work, but the presentations are a part of the course, right? And you're supposed to also understand what other people have been presenting, not just your area, right? So in the oral exam, we'll ask you about your area, but we'll also ask you about the general topic area. And what other people have been presenting. So we have about 12 weeks. So 2 of those, or 13 weeks, like 2 of those I use up in the start. So we're kind of around the sort of 10-ish. And so groups of 15 of you in pairs gives us 7 weeks. So we can kind of use those first 7 weeks. After the first couple of weeks, so we can use those through, and we'll see how we're going in terms of using up the time and see what we put in those last 3 slots. I have some externals who are doing serious games who can come in and give us presentations. Right? I would kind of a bit like to load this course a bit heavier for your workload at the beginning of the course rather than the end of the course, because you will have the integration project running through, and so there'll be a bunch of time near the end of the semester where a project is going to be sucking all of your time. Right? So if I can load you up early with this course, then it gives you a wee bit more balance at the end. Right? So rather than waiting and having my externals come in at the beginning of the course and give you lectures, I'll have them come in near the end of the course. So to kind of be interesting and inspiring near the end of the course rather than at the beginning, right? And if it was the only thing you were doing, then I might bring them in early. But I understand that this is part of a system. This is just one cog in the 4-cog system that you were trying to balance. So that's how we generally run the course. For the week coming up, I put on Blackboard at the moment. I put on a couple of things to do. So if you have a look on Blackboard and you have a look at the course information, I've asked you to have a look. So most of you should be able to download Elevate on your mobile phones and play a cognitive game on your mobile phones. And there are a couple of, there's NanoCrafter, and I want you to watch a couple of videos. One, Jane McGonigal talking about how games can save the world, which I want you to view critically. Right? You guys are now master's students. When I ask you to look at something, I don't want you to say, oh, I will just have to learn this because Simon's told me to learn this. Right? Simon says, therefore you guys do. Right? This isn't kindergarten. Even when Simon says something, you don't have to agree with Simon. So I want you to view these things critically and find flaws in them. Find things to discuss. Find things you disagree with. Right? Because these discussions will be far more interesting and educational if you guys can come up with things that you disagree with. Right? And so one of my friends finds Jane McGonigal very annoying, and so he has lots of criticisms, and there are other people who find her absolutely amazing and can't see anything that she says as being contentious or wrong or unfounded. Right? She's amazing, and everything she does is perfect. Right? So both opinions exist. You guys probably fall somewhere in the middle between I hate her and I can't stand watching her, and oh my god, I'm only ever going to watch her videos from now on. Right? So if that's the spectrum, I expect you'll sit somewhere in the middle. Well, I suppose you could go more. You could be obsessive and go to the US to try and meet her and stuff. If you were that obsessive, I hope none of you then go over the end of my spectrum, right? Or into the hating end of sending her anthrax or something, right? So just don't go crazy either end, and we should be fine. Okay, so I'm also going to have we'll use a Kahoot for some of these to discuss, kind of have a look at what some of your thoughts are and your opinions, rather than just as and you guys have all used Kahoot, so, and you see that as gamification, right? And it's something that we can certainly review. I have some strong opinions around Kahoot and what are good and bad about it. And I certainly know there is a lot of discussion in educational circles around that style of gamification, right? And certainly it's very engaging, but do you so is it a useful tool, and how do you use that tool most effectively, right? And so in all of our discussions, one of the things that we want to have is that nuance around good thing, bad thing, right? The idea that, these games and these tools are always going to be a bit mixed, right? There is unlikely ever to be a silver bullet which just works for everybody everywhere. Okay, so the course is going to be run. We'll be handing out in the GoRad system. You'll get the papers will be in that system, and in there are also a section to ask questions. Now, some of you have used my question asking online system before. This is the new GoRad system that Marish and I have worked on, mostly Marish has worked on. And so those questions are connected to the articles, right? So we post an article and you post questions and you vote on other people's questions around those articles, right? Now, this is very useful for the opponent, right? Because, of course, they have to argue against the paper, and so when you post questions, the opponent go, "Oh yeah, that's a really good one, I can use that," right? So that also helps them. But we're hoping to give you guys scores on the quality of the questions that you ask, right? So each week you guys will be upvoting people's questions and then being able to have like a league tally of who asks the best questions. Okay? Now we've been designing some mechanics around that, and we can have Mariusz and I asking anonymous questions, and you guys are asking anonymous questions, because the idea is that they're anonymous when they're a question, but we know who posted them, right? So you guys post them, you don't know who was it who posted that question, right? So when you vote, you're not just saying, oh, I'm voting for PMS, right? You're voting for the question, right? Now, we were discussing as a game mechanic whether we should give you extra points for voting for us and voting for our question, right? So if we insert our questions in amongst your questions, do you get bonus points for working out which one's the lecturer? Do I just suck out points like a taxation on the point system by like removing all the points that you give to me and go, haha, none of you get those points? How do we play the mechanic, and what would be interesting for you guys to play as a, like, should there be a separate category for guess the lecturer's question, right? Because I don't know, you guys have played Pictionary before, yeah? We get given a word and you have to draw it and other people have to guess it. And there was a game where you'd have a word and everybody would write the definitions of the word, and then the person who had like picked out the word has the real definition and everybody else's definition, right? And then what I read is I read the real definition of the word and then each other definition of the word. And what you guys have to do is pick the one that's from the dictionary, right? And you get points either by picking the right dictionary definition, or when somebody picks yours as being the dictionary definition, right? So you got like two ways of scoring points. So in that sense, you could have like our questions could be in there, and you could have a system where you're trying to guess which one of the questions is the lecturer's question, and you get points for either guessing which one's mine, or when someone else guesses that your question was my question. Right? As a game mechanic that we could play, which would be independent of the ranking of how good the question is. It would be a right. That's a really good question. Certainly Simon didn't ask it. So you pick another one. Yeah, that seems annoying. So I'll pick that one as the Simon question. So putting kind of that mechanic around like the questions that are being asked around the academic papers, right? So we're kind of interested in playing those like with those mechanics and having your input into how we should play those mechanics, right? What is missing in your motivation? How do we engage your motivation more? For example, your sleep, right? When you want to sleep better, right? Sleep might be considered a bit boring compared to all the other fun things you could be doing. And so trying to find a way of motivating yourself to actually go to bed on time, right? So it may be I'm just not motivated to go to bed, right? And so ticking up motivation. It's unlikely that is a lack of information, that you don't understand that sleep is useful, and that's why you don't sleep, right? That's unlikely to be the cause of the lack of sleep, right? So when we dig into problems, we will look at motivation mostly. What we're going to do, and I'm just checking time, make sure I give you guys a break. So what we're going to do is for the topics, right? This semester, you guys will be able to choose which papers you focus on, right? And they will be in various areas. Right? So I'm interested in you guys actually saying, well, you know, I'm more interested in games for health, or I'm more interested in games for education, or games for physical activity, or games for training, or whatever, right? We have various papers in those areas. I will select those papers unless you find a more relevant paper, right? If you can find a relevant paper in the area that you want to discuss, you send it to me, I look at it and go, oh yes, that's as good or better than the one I was suggesting in that area, and then you get to use that one, right? But I have a default paper. Next semester, when you go into the advanced game technology specialization course for some of you, I give you more control and you start picking out the papers that you're going to review in that area, right? But at the moment, I will be feeding papers first, and if you find one better, great, right? If you want to go and find a better one, that's all good. But at the moment, but the default is that I will be feeding the papers in, next semester I won't be feeding you with papers, you will have to find everything yourself. Right? So it's that progression towards doing a master's study where they say, here's the problem. So, well, actually, they don't even say what the problem is. They say, well, there's this stuff, work out a problem and fix it. So, we're quite hands-off by the thesis, right? But here we're still going to give you those papers. But I'm interested, I've got more topic areas than there are students. Even if I had 60 of you, I could think of 60 interesting topic areas in serious games. Right? So we're going to have 8 topic areas. Right? So over this week, so I'll post them into Blackboard, and then potentially move over to GitLab if that's what you guys decide you want to do. I will post those topics, and then you can start signing up for those topic areas. Right? I will show you the sample paper, right? So the first sample paper, and so you can see you can kind of read one of the a paper in that area, and then choose which of those kind of. We'll do a selection. You kind of say, oh, this will be my first choice, this will be my second choice, this will be my third choice. You make those choices, and then you get. Hopefully, I give everybody their first choice, and that will be the area you get to focus on. And you'll read those papers and review additional material in that area. Right? Okay. So, do you have questions so far about the course? Does it make sense? Do you kind of understand what I'm trying to achieve? Okay. So, before we have a break, we'll just go around the table, and I'll spin the camera around as we go around the table. And I'm interested in your game background and your serious game interest, right? So what area of serious games are you interested in? So how much gaming have you done or are you doing? What is your interest in serious games? And, like PMS, are you currently playing any serious games? Right? Now, you don't have to, if you've got court-appointed therapy for abuse. I don't need to know criminal activities or anything like that. If you've been at a court-appointed game activity related to some crime you have in the past, you don't need to tell me everything. It's not an interrogation. So if it's embarrassing, you don't need to tell me. Not that I'll be embarrassed, but so yeah. But if you are currently involved in the gamification, now some of you might need to extend the definition of gamification. So, and a serious game. So while we go around the table introducing your game background, like what area of serious games you might be interested in, or just in general, and if you're doing anything currently, also think where the edge of what a serious game is in terms of what you think a serious game is. Right? So one of the first things I say, and when I'm giving talks, is I consider this education as a gamification of learning. Right? Because learning is interesting, and then we've made this game around it with points, which we call grades, and quests, which we call courses, and status points, which we call degrees, and you have guilds, which we call universities.
Monthly subscription.
Hmm?
You also have a subscription.
We have a business model around either subscription, or you can pay up front, yeah. Right? There is, pre-purchase a whole package, or you can pay it off later. So we have, we've got this big game around education. Some people consider war games as being games, right? And war itself as being a game, right? So while we introduce, think about where is the edge of what you think a game is. And do you think education is a game? Do you think policing is a game? Do you think war is a game? Do you think health care is a game? Where does the edge of what a game is fit? Okay, so we'll go around the table, and then we can have a break, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss what a game is. Okay, so what's that? I'm just wondering why there's banging on the walls. Okay, PMS.
Yeah, so PMS is the name. My gaming background, sort of, I like stuff that is, I guess, weird to a certain degree. So I try to play different genres, a lot of indie games, etc. Big focus on story and narrative. I'm not really that fond of challenging games. I'm more interested in sort of the, like, interacting with the world. In terms of serious games, well, I am sort of, I guess, lightly gamifying my sleeping patterns. Just some simple point-based stuff with an app. Other than that, I haven't really played that many serious games before. And I guess that if we widen the definition enough, everything could be a game. So, you know, I'll join in on that.
How do we?
Yeah. Games for education is probably the area I'm most interested in.
Right.
So, my name is Andreas, and in terms of games, I mostly play RPGs, MMOs, and indie games. I also try out a different variety of games and genres, because I like trying different things, but there are still some genres that I'm not too fond of, like first-person shooters, for example. In terms of serious games, I'm not really playing anything currently, but in terms of interest areas, I'm pretty interested in games for education.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Tarja. Game background. As a whole, most games I've played is either platforms or open world or mostly single player, where I can have a story and say do what I can do, or not what I can do, but what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have quite a collective mania. So right now I'm playing Hearthstone, which is a collective card game. I use way too much time on that.
Yes.
Which I know is a problem, but I can't stop.
So there is. So we can talk about game addiction in this course as well, right? So
No, but it's finding an actual official diagnosis.
DMF, yes, the American Medical Association. So yes, the DRM. Oh no, it's D. What's the?
Isn't it on the WHO?
I think it was
The World Health.
Yes, World Health Organization,
In
but
the
also
draft.
in the draft, game addiction. So yes, one of the things that you have in game addiction is when it starts to negatively affect your life, right? So just doing something a lot isn't generally doesn't qualify as an addiction, right? Just that you do it a massive amount doesn't mean it's an addiction. It's that it makes your life worse, significantly worse, that you do this thing. So yeah, so if you so one of my students, I remember going into the lab and going, why are you playing Bubble Bobble? And he said, I just had to finish this level. But your exam started 2 minutes ago. Yeah, I know, but I've still got like the 15-minute window when I lock the doors. I don't. You got an exam on. Yeah. So at that point, that's causing a problem, right? When you're giving up exam time to finish your level. So yeah, no. So yeah, it could be an addiction once it starts having a negative effect. Yeah. But
Went to the serious games. Right now, I'm not playing anything. Earlier, I used some of the serious games to motivate me to train.
okay.
For training. But then I started on the university, and then I stopped.
Right. So were you using like Runkeeper or?
Mostly for push-ups and pull-ups and more strength-based.
Okay.
And then when I got my, not this phone, but my last phone, I had included a walking counter. So
Right.
I used that. That's with achievements and all that. So
Right. Yes, and number of floors going up and down as
Yes.
well. Yep. Yeah.
and then I switched phones, and then now I don't have it anymore.
Right.
So
And you haven't decided to buy a Fitbit or something to.
not yet.
Okay. And what area?
I think both. For training, I think my interest is more personal than to see what I could do for anyone else, because I have a hard time to motivate myself to train for training. So the serious games for training would be more my personal interest, but education is more I'm more interested to see what to do that for as a whole.
Okay, right. So, but it's perfectly reasonable to use this as a kind of, I'm interested in achieving this thing. How could games help me achieve that? Right? Use yourself as a test case. That's perfectly reasonable. If it was games for a psychosis and dealing with schizophrenia, then you kind of have to have schizophrenia before you could kind of study that aspect from it. So yeah, but I think all of us could potentially do more exercise than we do, and so I don't think you're necessarily out of the core group for those games. Okay, so health kind of so the distinction between health and wellness. So one of the interesting, although we talk about games for health in the US, they don't like saying that because as soon as you use the word health with an app, the FDA have to approve it, right? And so you'll find most Americans will refer to wellness apps. Not a game for health, it's a game for wellness, right? And so it's a fitness or it's a diet thing. It's not a health thing.
Can you then also be a wellness doctor and not get sort of like
Yes, they do have wellness practitioners. Because if you use doctor, that also is health. But, yeah. So okay.
I'm Christian. I play a lot of games, mostly multiplayer games, as I don't really like or enjoy playing alone. But as for gamification games, I also use some sort of sleep tracker. But other than that, I wouldn't say I use too many games like that. And I'm definitely most interested in games for education.
Okay.
My name is Henrik. I like everything, or I have a huge variety in games I like. I can like a single player game with a good story, or play multiplayer games with friends. My interest is mostly in games for education because I feel I've learned a lot from games that wasn't directly educational or meant to be educational, but they've still taught me a lot since I was playing them since I was a child. So I learned like English and mathematics and stuff without the game really being focused on that. So I kind of want to see how it goes when you actually try to focus on that area.
Yeah, so there's that side channel learner. There's some really interesting kind of challenges in that area, particularly when you look at what people are what they say they're trying to get people to learn, and then when you look at what people actually learn from their games, for example, right? And also misconceptions, right? So a bunch of the people who make games don't actually know what they're talking about, and so a bunch of people learn things that aren't true, right? And so there's a really interesting kind of discussion around at what level we should be using games and we can use games for education. But yeah, I'm certainly the English language thing. One of the teachers at don't think it was Jurvik Vidrigona, but one of the Vidrigonas nearby was saying that he teaches workshop, right? So he teaches the kids who aren't doing academically very well, but he says their English scores are better than everybody else in the school, right? Because they play more games than the others, and they learn English from the games they play, right? And so their actual English, conversational English, is far better than the top students who can write it but don't actually, don't have conversational English. So we can. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Okay.
I'm Mahesh. I haven't played quite a lot of games recently, but I used to play like multiplayer games, and for single games, I used to play like games that had adventure kind of stuff that interests me, and I also use like a fitness tracker and for my wellness. But since I lost my fitness tracker, I haven't been so healthy, I think. Sleep is the only exercise I do.
Mm.
So. Yeah.
Yep.
And for serious gaming, I'm more interested. For myself, I'm more interested with the health apps
Mm-hmm.
and sports, and I'm also quite interested with the educational apps.
Okay, so
Games.
so health with a side order of education.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, my name is Tor Martin. I do play Hearthstone, but not as much, I think.
Oh.
Um,
Fight.
and I also like certain party games like Cards Against Humanity,
Mhm.
and also some casual games like Super Mario or similar. And in addition, I use fitness apps like Strava to keep track of my running, and also app called Hercules for keeping track of physical strength exercises and such.
So you've got a few tools that you use.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm interested in serious games within health and education, perhaps social games as well.
Okay. So games with a social conscience message, kind of.
Yeah.
So environmental games around the education around the environment and social and like, understanding things.
Hi, my name is Anton, and I don't play a lot of games, but I prefer like action and adventure games. Now I use my tracker, but I have never considered it like a game, but just for finding information about my day activities. So also I used an app for learning English. Yeah, and I'm interested in sport games, like for motivation and educational games.
I'm Peter. I play whatever I come across that looks interesting. And for serious games I play, it's mostly games about awareness, a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that. I don't use any fitness trackers or anything like that. I don't. You have to do exercises to track them, so
Right.
non-applicable.
Well, you can still use them to track when you go to sleep and when you get up, for example. So,
Yeah.
you know, they can just be information rather than necessarily activity, but yeah.
I haven't felt the need for that. And for what I'm interested in, it's mostly games for education and a bit games about mental health.
Okay. So we're getting quite, you guys aren't rushing off into the politics and games of science and other areas. You do seem quite interested in health and education. So we might have to look at these subcategories like mental health, or like we could look at younger education or adult education, or so we can kind of peer down kind of into areas which focus just beyond. I'm interested in education, but I'm interested in how kids learn to do math, or I'm interested in learning about physics, or so yeah, and we can.
Now that you mentioned it,
Yeah.
I am interested in games that about science stuff. And there's a few interesting about how proteins fold.
Fold it.
Yeah, stuff like that I think is interesting too. So
Okay.
if there's something in that.
So yeah, so I generally like covering Fold It and iWire as two of the seminal games for science activities. But you can also look at some of the stuff NASA's been doing and SETI's been doing around games around kind of doing interstellar understanding stuff. But yeah, so we can certainly look at some of those as well.
You also asked if we think that politic or war is a game. I'm thinking so that war and politics are games also.
So what's interesting is I think it depends on who you are, whether it's a game or not. So I think if you're a soldier, in a front line about to be blown up, it might not feel much like a game, right?
Yeah,
but if you're a general sitting back and just deciding who dies,
Yeah.
it might be very much like a game.
Or if you're a drone pilot.
Or if you're a drone pilot, it might feel extremely like a game because it's the same controllers and yeah. Yeah, they actually, because actually the US military did use game controllers on their drone controls because they found they were the best, most ergonomic. People already were good with them. We'll just plug in game controllers and they'll play the game of drone killing. So okay, yep.
My name is Benjamin. I mostly play multiplayer games. Recently I play mostly survival games. PUBG. I also played some first player shooter games like CS and Counter-Strike. When it comes to serious games, I'm mostly interested in health and education, like and I have made in my bachelor I made a traffic learning system for children of the age 6 to 9, I think. Yeah, and it was interesting because we had to cooperate with a lot of experts in different areas. Like we had to talk to teachers and we had to talk to people who knew how children at that age will behave in traffic. Yeah, that's an interesting aspect that we had to cooperate with a lot of experts.
I'm sorry, and what's the purpose of the game?
To learn the children how to behave in traffic when they are crossing the streets and how they're supposed to look left, right, left.
So the getting the habit right
Yeah.
of doing this. Yes, and you can make those variously gruesome by like having other children run out into traffic and get smashed by cars and splat all over the road and see, look, Johnny didn't make it. So no, we had a game that was trying to teach teenage mothers how to be aware of the environment, so that knives and van cooker cables and stuff, so that they would be aware of what the dangers were. And we had a long discussion around, like, do you show babies with knives in their heads? Like, is this part of the game or not? So we as game developers wanted it part of the games. The health professionals felt that was a bit disturbing. But we were trying to say, these are teenage mothers. They're already in a disturbing place. But yeah, so no, it is interesting kind of the breadth that is required to create a game. And one of the things we'll be looking at is, in this course, is around the research, right? So for example, in this course, we'd look at how you take that game and actually see if it's effective, right? And actually analyze why it might be effective, right? So rather than just making it, it then goes into the research on those kind of things. Because which also, once you understand how to research it, it does also tell you a bunch of things about how to make it better, right? Because if you do the research right, you can kind of understand where it's not working and then try and fix them, right? So that's, yeah. Okay.
I used to play a lot of multiplayer games when I was younger.
Name first, so.
Vegard.
Yeah.
But now I mostly play single-player games, story-based and puzzle games and platform games, and a lot of games on my phone, of course. A couple of years ago I was running regularly, and then I had an app on my phone called, I think it was called Zombie Run or something. And it was a really cool fitness concept where you would it used your GPS, and your home was like your base, and then you had to go out on runs in your neighborhood to collect stuff that you could build your base with. And it would also come randomly. There would be zombie attacks where you had to outrun the zombies. You felt like they were behind you. Yeah, it was a really cool concept, and it really motivated me to go out and run. And I think if the game had been even better, like on the standard that games that I would buy
A Walking
are,
Dead style.
yeah, I would get really motivated to go on runs. So yeah, I think that was really interesting. Yeah.
So did you find you ran less after you stopped playing the game?
I stopped running and then I stopped playing the game. So it was
Correlated.
And now I'm not running at all.
At all?
Yeah.
Right.
And if I would start to run, I would download that app on my new phone, I think, if it still exists.
Yep. Okay. Yes, there's an interesting question around what happens after the game ends.
Yeah.
Within all of this material, that is an interesting question.
Okay, yeah, because the game didn't have a definitive end, I think. But of course, if you have the best base possible, you probably feel a little less motivated to continue running.
So yes, and this is a question that we need to ask of all of these systems, right? Is although the game might be very motivating while you play it, what happens when either you max out the game, or you move on to a different game, or you lose interest in that particular game? What effect does it have on the thing that you're trying to alter? Right. So there's a very kind of that's one of the questions we need to think about whenever we intervene in someone's life and change their motivations for doing things. What effect does it have once we leave? Right? Once we're no longer the game or no longer motivating in a particular way. I know this was a standard thing with parenting, right? I mean, if in New Zealand we used to hit our children until relatively recently, so we've only just brought in laws saying you're not allowed to hit your kids. But one of the challenges was that if you hit your kids, they will learn to avoid being caught rather than avoid the activity, right? Because they're not necessarily associating the punishment with the activity, they're associating the punishment with being caught, because that's the closest relevant activity that just happened before they got a physical punishment, right? If you make it a much more slow burn punishment, which isn't kind of an instant thing, it's runs over time where there are long consequences, then there's time to try and associate it with other things that are earlier, right? But yeah, if you do a snap thing, it usually associates directly to the thing that just happened, which in that case is being caught. So there are challenges. What area of games are you interested in?
I would also have to say educational games, I think. But of course, games like that where you can motivate someone to do something also seems very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. You go. Oh, okay. Climb over the table. Yep.
My name's Shu. I mostly play MMORPGs. Right now I'm not playing any serious games, but I've used it to learn languages.
Duolingo or?
Yeah, Duolingo.
Yeah.
I'm most interested in probably health and education, I think.
Okay. And just sneaking in at the end.
Hey.
You're saying your name?
Yeah.
What games you play, and your game background, your interest in serious games, and any serious games you're currently playing.
Currently not
Bjorn?
playing serious games, but I'm Bjorn, yes. Just came by because I thought I'd want to join in, or just here, but not taking the course.
Right, because
Yeah.
yes,
I'm
you're
master
he's
student,
doing his master's
so-
thesis. But you might as well introduce and
that's fine.
see if we're doing it the same way that we did last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Currently not playing. I'm playing different games. I think. Playing a lot of Skyrim modded, and I think Solaris as well. Wouldn't say I'm playing any serious games at the moment. Maybe I don't know if Nier Automata counts as a serious game. So no. Really.
Okay. Yep. So you'll be able to observe.
Yeah.
And as interesting, you don't need to present. You can be interested in just following along and
Yeah.
coming and sitting in on and being critical.
Yeah.
Now,
At
so
the papers.
yeah.
At the paper. at the
Yes, you can
papers.
just look at the papers and be critical of everyone else's
Yeah.
presentation. But yeah, no, that's a perfectly reasonable way. Now, the other thing that we have is that. Oh, and if I can get this one at me. So you guys are doing the master's level serious games course, right? I also have a PhD level serious games course, and we currently have. I think it's going to be 5 PhD students in Trondheim who are taking this course because the PhD course. And so what they will be doing is they'll be following the lectures remotely, right? And following the discussions, but they'll be doing a research paper on top of this activity, right? So this is actually being used for them as kind of input into their research project, right? So we will have some PhD observers observing on the stream and potentially watching afterwards and doing some analysis of discussions and analysis of serious games and also potentially looking at how we use a game in the course to motivate and those sort of things, right? So there is actually Bjorn being potentially observing when he feels he's got time, but we do actually have some observers on the sessions who I haven't decided yet whether or not they should give some presentations. It may be what we do at the end of you guys presenting, is we have the PhD students from Trondheim presenting the research they've been doing on serious games. Right, because so I'm not giving them papers to read and telling them you'll present this paper and discuss it. They have to generate their own research, and some of that will be literature stuff, but some of it would also be some of the experiments some of them are doing in exogaming, right? Because a group of them are doing exercise games for exercise and training. We also have Sunos Rehabilitation Hospital, where I've given a couple of presentations. And we've got a bachelor group who is looking at doing wheelchair rehabilitation games. So we're looking at getting them working with Sunos. And so we have a kind of those medical connections. I also have a PhD student who is working at the hospital, or he's looking at becoming a PhD student, looking at using VR and training and potentially games for training ambulance staff. For how to deal with psychiatric patients. So there are a wide range of games, and certainly in the games for health area we have a bunch of contacts in the UK and the Netherlands has a lot of health game activity. Games for education is happening all over the place. So we have my children at the international school are some of the things they do are using games for education. So if you want to do research on some of the ways games are being used, then the international school is happy to have us come in and do research with the international the students they have. We also have I've met a couple of times the guy who is the CEO of Dragonbox, which does the mathematical education games on mobile, and they've got a big commercial partners as well, and they do a lot of development, and they've worked with MIT and done research on their math games, right? So we can also connect with industry working in these areas to do the research. Okay, so yeah, so that tells you we've got some observers. They're not in. They'll see this afterwards, so we've not got them real time in here, but they'll be showing up next week and hopefully be watching. And I might make them do some of the readings and read the papers and potentially post some questions, and they'll be anonymous, so you won't know whether these are strange Trondheim research questions from PhDs or other students' questions. Right? Now we do have 15 of you, which would end up being quite a lot of questions. Right? If each of you asked a question per paper, then massive long list of questions, and you might not you might be struggling if you're like the 12th person to ask a question. There might have been all of the interesting 12 questions may have already been used.
But then you're motivating people to be first, so they can get the job done.
They can get the
at the end.
Yes, rather than the minute before they and no one will vote for you if you do it the minute before the election. And you get points for people voting. So I'm interested in also discussing with you how we should run that game, right? Because there are lots of ways of running reputation systems, right, and scoring points systems. So we can give you a quota that you have to you get a score based on the best 5 questions that you ask, right? So once you've asked 5 really good questions and you're happy with that, then that's your score, and you don't need to ask any more questions because you're good, or the best 3, and then so if you skip a week and don't ask a question, well, you don't score any points that week, right? So we could look at how we manage that. We could also say you have a maximum of 5 questions that you can ask during the semester, so pick those appropriately. We were looking at how, because Mariusz and we've got a bunch of master students who are wanting our time, and our time gets used up near the end. We were wondering if we could create kind of a currency token based activity around, we give you guys all tokens to spend, and then those tokens get you time with Mariusz or I. And then we have office hours. We say, okay, this is 2-hour block is for students to come and see us, and we divide the length of time by the number of tokens that are submitted at the beginning of the session. So if you're the only person who wants to see us, your 1 token gets you the full 2 hours, right? Because you're the only person who brought a token, so your token's worth 2 hours. If it's the day before the assignment's due, and 10 of you put in tokens for that 2-hour block, then you each get your 12 minutes of time. Right? So saving your tokens mean that they decrease in value over time, because they theoretically buy you less of our time at the end of the semester based on how much time people are wanting. So you've then got the strategy game of when do you spend your tokens to try and get our time. No?
I think you mentioned this system a few years ago as well.
Yes, I discussed. Now we're thinking we might do it with a cryptocurrency. And whether or not you guys should have open trading on lecture token time.
So there will be lecture token mining.
And we're not entirely sure how you mine lecture time, right? It may be, coming in and digging out the snow in my house. Might be a way that you mine lecture time, right? Because you've got, I've got time that I have to allocate to a bunch of stuff. If you can free up my time, then I can give you tokens for that, right? So, but no, I hadn't thought of a way of mining the tokens. I thought I'd just give them to you as a gift from the Norwegian government, which of course pays my salary and is supposed to give you education. But theoretically, if there's activities that use up my time that you would be better at than I would be, you could mine tokens. But no, so because we're also interested in what motivates you. Is there ways we can use games? So several of you have used games to motivate various activities in the past. So during the course, I'm interested in you saying, what would motivate you, and also discussing and analysing yourself as to what it is about games that motivate you, right? And how can you roll those into activities, right? So if you find productive ways of motivating yourself to get things done, is that useful during your master's thesis, right? Given that you've got a long deadline with not that much kind of checking along the way, you're going to have to find the way of motivating yourself through that process. And I know some people do I need to have 1,000 words written per day, right? So they want to write 80,000 words. They've got 80 days, so they're going to write 1,000 words a day. Right? And then they say, well, I'll write for 80 days, and I'll review it back to make it smaller. Right? But they kind of give themselves daily targets and try and give themselves rewards for meeting their daily targets. Right? So instead of doing 10,000 steps, you do 1,000 words. Right? So kind of that way of motivating. Right? Now, one of the nice things about a thesis is you're only trying to motivate yourself till it's finished. Right? Whereas with fitness and running, you're kind of not really supposed to stop. Right? You're supposed to try and keep being fit for a very long time. And so it doesn't have this like compacted window where there is a clear end to when the game needs to run. Right? So this course has a defined end. The 4th of May is the end of lectures. We can have the oral exam sometime in early May. I won't push that back into June. Last year it was, I think we had the 3rd of June, so we actually pushed it back until after a bunch of other stuff was done. I'm not going to be here on the 4th of June, so we'll roll that forward and kind of bring it earlier. Right? So in terms of the course, you've got the stuff on sorry, it's gone. I shouldn't say that word. You have the stuff on Blackboard. Do you have an opinion on whether we should use Blackboard or GitLab?
I have an opinion.
Having an opinion is a good thing?
I prefer GitLab.
You'd prefer a GitLab
Yeah.
solution? Okay.
I think so, at least. It sort of depends what all the other courses are.
So
I remember last semester we both had Blackboard and Confluence,
mhm.
and we were handing in the reports in Inspira as well.
Mhm.
So this was sort of yeah.
Yeah. So having a GitLab kind of repo style way of doing things and referring to things.
I mean, then it's at least easier to just set up a script or something to pull once a day or whatever, and then you at least always just go into that folder and you have the newest
material in there, right? And we're still going to use GoRad to post the papers and the discussion forum is in there, but we can have other material going through GitLab. So I think, well, if we coordinate between this course and Mariusz is doing the mobile, so how many are you doing the mobile wearable course? And so who is not doing the mobile wearable course? So we only have one. Okay. So we'll try and make sure the mobile wearable course, we kind of unify what we do between the two of them. In this one, we do oral presentations. So Mariusz traditionally uses written presentations, right? So he's been doing written discussions and written counters, right? So that's what you guys did last year.
Yeah.
So in this course we did more oral and verbal discussions. In that course it was more written discussion. So how did you find that balance? Was it reasonable, or do you think we should have all done written, or?
No, I think it's quite fine.
Trying to have a mix?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you will dislike intensely having to lead an oral discussion, and some of you will dislike having to write a bunch of stuff. So, rather than all doing one way or all doing the other way, I think we'll probably keep different ways so you're uncomfortable an equal amount of time. Or an equal number of you are uncomfortable across the courses. But yeah, there is a lot of overlap between those two courses. Now, you guys have 4 courses this semester, most of you. Right? So you have this tomorrow morning. We start at 9 because I'm not quite NTNU. Even though they try and make me into NTNU, I still resist. So we start at 9 rather than starting at 8. Because I think it's better to start at 9, and you guys will find an hour some other time to do the work. If that's okay with you. So we go 9 till 4 tomorrow with most of you. How many are not doing expert and teamwork? Okay, so you're all in the expert and teamwork, which is an interesting course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, you do get the experienced designers.
Yeah, so we interaction design. So in expert in teams, you'll also be in teams with interaction designers, right? And we're going to discuss how you make those teams work, right? Because they're interaction designers. So yeah, they're the ones with the communication problem, obviously. So the 4 courses you have are this course, the mobile wearable course, the expert in teams, and integration project. Okay, so it's Mariusz and I, and those 2. Expert in teams is me running the VR village, so we'll be doing VR stuff and team collaboration and how you make teams work together, and lots of reflection, lots and lots of reflection. You'll be so sick of your own face by looking at you're holding a mirror up to your soul. Lots of reflection, and the integration project. Now the integration project, we propose projects for you to do, and how much do you know about the integration project? Did you have was there a session on Monday for the integration project? No. Okay. It might be next Monday. In the integration project, so just kind of giving you an overview.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
When do we get sort of like the actual date for that? Because the first time it's listed in the schedule is like 19th February.
The first class is
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll talk to Steinruner about that.
I mean, we were quite late last year as well, starting that up.
Yes. How we used to do this when it was 10s and 5s and things was that we actually had that course in the second half of the semester, and we had another course in the first half of the semester. So the timetabling of it has been late, right? And we're gonna shift that earlier, right? Because it'll give you a balance more across the whole semester, right? Because we did start it late, and yeah, I think it's better to bring it up earlier. So in the integration project, you create a project or you work on a project which integrates 2 of the 3 areas of the master's title, right? So Games with Mobile is the applied science title. So your integration projects uses 2 of those 3. Up here. It also has to include some aspect of a business case, so there's innovation in there as well as being integration, right? So you should be thinking about what the innovation is, but it moves you away from the tools that you did last semester, which was the applied computer science project was more about learning the tools than it was about the project itself, right? This semester we expect you to use those tools, right? So continue to do agile or do issue tracking and track your time and those sort of things, but more those are expected, and we move on to starting to say, wait, how do you actually develop across these areas using those tools in a semester-long project? So we had some students double up their expert in teams and their integration project to be a single big project, right? So that became then a 15-point project rather than 2 7.5-point projects. That is possible. However, you do document what bits are for which course, right? And we expect you to do twice the work, right? So it's not that you get away with doing 1.2 times the work by combining them. Mariusz and I will coordinate across the mobile and wearable and games course, and because I have your expert in teams and I'm involved in the integration projects, unfortunately you see a lot of me this semester. I mean, some of you might not want to see me anymore, but yeah, so if you guys have problems, we are in charge of all the things you are doing. So if you need to change something, we talk with ourselves and change it. Okay? So as a group, if you want to move something forward, you want to move something back, you want to discuss how we're arranging things or when things are due, basically it's Mariusz and I, Dipti and Runa. Those 4 are who we discuss things with, right? And so we can generally get those things changed pretty easily and adjust to what needs to be done. right? And if you identify something going wrong or something that you don't like, just tell us and we'll try and change things. Again, now that we're in TNU, we also have to set up a reference group. Do you guys want to be a whole class reference group where you get to review the course? We have to have 3 meetings during the semester.
Like we did last year? Or last semester?
Like we're supposed to have done last semester,
Yeah,
but
like we did
failed.
the semester before that again?
Yeah, failed badly. Well, you know, I'm leaving.
Did you actually get any reprimands for never doing reference meetings?
Well, I don't think they've worked out that. No, so okay, so last semester, so last year, Jurvik's excuse was that, oh, we're still new at this, don't get grumpy at us, right? This, like last semester's reports aren't due until the 30th of January. So after the 30th of January, that's when I'm going to start getting reprimanded, right? But I have 38 annual leave days to take between now and the 31st of May. There are 36 working days in April and May combined. So if they push me, I'm just out of here at the end of March. So hopefully they won't get grumpy at me. So no, you know, it's not like they're going to get grumpy at me. They will get grumpy at me. I'm going to try and write up some reports, and I do have some messages from courses and with the third years and the first years, we did have a couple of meetings and we did discuss things. But
obviously, we had meetings last semester.
I
can sign up for that.
You can say that you've talked to me at least at some point during the semester, and told me when I was doing a shit job. Yeah. So you know, we might have to write up this month a bunch of stuff about getting feedback. And the challenge is that the system is designed around a class of 1,000 students. But when you're running a class of 15 students, or 7, you don't need really the overhead of 3 of the 7 of you are going to be the special 3. Really? Yes, because it's anonymous feedback. But yeah, so no, we will still need your feedback. Now, there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can either sit down and like discuss how the course is going. Though, as I said, if you guys want to change what we're doing, then I think we have that agreement and we discuss it, right, during these sessions. I think also potentially giving you out anonymous forms to fill in with opinions and gives you an anonymous feedback system, because this is very personal and I know who you all are when you say, you know, Simon, you're a dick. Whereas, you know, if I give you an anonymous form to fill out that you can just say anything you damn well like, then, you know, that gives you a second channel to discuss the course with us without us knowing who you are, right? So if you think that like if those two are acceptable 2 channels, one here we can discuss the direction of the course, and the other is that we have this anonymous channel for you to say things if you feel that there is a problem. Right? Are those acceptable as ways of giving us feedback?
Yeah.
You don't feel that the need for any other? Do you want class reps who you can go to if you're having a problem with me and then make the class rep talk to me? Or are you happy with directly sending me anonymous comments if you feel that you need to be anonymous?
Less overhead.
There is less overhead, and if we and the anonymous systems are completely anonymous, so it won't be a problem. And I also, you know, because you guys can't offend me, there's nothing you can say about what I do that offends me. I might try and fix it because, you know, you identify a bug, I fix the bug, right? But you are allowed to criticize me, right? And I don't get angry or upset at anybody criticizing me. Right? Other lecturers do get emotionally involved in criticism, so you can't necessarily openly criticize them as much as you can openly criticize me. But yeah, no. If we keep up relatively open lines of communication, and we'll have the questionnaires go out where you can make comments. Okay, so we'll see all of you tomorrow morning at 9. For the expert and teamwork stuff, yeah, we'll be putting you in groups. You'll be in groups with interaction designers. You'll be picking VR projects to work on, VR, AR. So you can do AR stuff. We have a VR village partly because we're interested in VR, and we don't. In an applied computer science course, I think VR gives you an opportunity to apply a bunch of computer science understanding to problems, and so it should be reasonably interesting to a lot of you to be involved in VR or AR. So you don't have to go the VR route. You can go, mobile phone AR systems, and we'll decide with the interaction designers tomorrow through that process. It is every Wednesday, right? So block out every Wednesday, just say, no, every Wednesday it's gone, right? And so it's the rest of the week that you'll have Marish and I arrange our things, right? So I'm taking Tuesday, I think he's taking Friday. Yeah, so he's Friday morning, I think it is?
10 to 12. Yeah.
10 to 12, right, okay. So he's Friday, I'm Tuesday. Integration project, I think, is normally Monday. Yeah. So if you kind of arrange your 4 courses into 4 days, and then use the floating day to try and get more work done on one of the things that is demanding stuff, right? So you can kind of break it into Monday's integration, Tuesday serious games, Wednesday is expert in teams, Thursday is your floating day, and Friday is your mobile wearable. Right? That could be a way that you organize things.
Can I just ask, for the integration project, how is like the group set up? Is it like 2 programmers, 2 designers? Or?
No, so expert in teams, the integration project, you don't have interaction day. In expert in teams, we generally have groups of 5/6, depending on how many people we have. And we try and get a mix of interaction designers with programmers. So we generally try and have at least 2 of each type. So it could be 4 and 2 at maximum skew. But we found that 5 and 1, 5 designers and 1 poor programmer. Yeah, you guys have, you worked it out. Yeah. And the other way around. Well, the other way around is usually not as bad. 1 designer and 5 programmers, because the programmers usually get a lot done while the designers kind of telling them to do stuff. But that's not the ratio we have. So we'll try and do a relatively balanced mixed.
Also the international students. I'm not sure how many you have this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many we have in the course this year. Last year, what we were able to do is we put
1 in each group.
Yeah, we strategically put 1 in each group. And there was 1 group that had 2 international students, so they'd have cultural issues to also discuss in how groups work, right? Because when I was up at the Expert in Teams workshop up in Trondheim, one of the things they wanted us to do was role play, having a heated discussion. And it's kind of Norwegians role playing a heated discussion. It was kind of like you guys don't really seem upset at each other at all. That's barely a discussion, let alone a heated discussion. Whereas you can, like, if you're going to throw chairs across the room and storm out, that's a heated discussion. So culturally, I think there was some mismatch into how things work. And also, you'll read a bunch of literature which comes from the US where they say, if somebody's quiet in the group, it may be that they're upset. So if the group falls silent, you should reflect on why people are upset in the group. And I think in Norway, if a group falls silent, everyone's happy. If nobody's saying anything, everything's fine. So in America, apparently, if everybody's quiet, it's because bad things are happening.
Well, in that case, it's only a problem if you have like 1 American student.
Yes, American
Everyone's having sex.
freaking out. That one guy's freaking out because the group's dissolving into anonymity. But yeah, so into animosity. But yeah, so no, we construct those groups. I've also used I kind of did the 6 animal model last year. I certainly introduced it. Yeah, and you guys adopted it. Yeah, one of the things that we do with my 6 animal model is that we look at that for trait diversity to try and get people with different kind of attitudes and desires into different groups, right? Because the interesting thing is to try and have different people with different traits. And one way of doing that is having different genders or having different races or having different backgrounds. But it's interesting because I think one of the challenges they have in Trondheim is they assume that by giving people from different disciplines and and using like genders and stuff, variation, that you'll get trait diversity. And the interesting thing is, there are some mechanical engineers and some chemists and some physicists and some computer scientists, when you put them in the room, they're all the same guy. Right? They're like, interests, attitude, approach, they're all just the same person. Right?
Different nerds.
They're just different nerds, right? And there are some girls you put in that group, and they're exactly the same nerd as all the men in the group, because they're just the nerd, right? They're the same geeky nerd like everyone else is. So you don't actually get trait diversity, even though you get faculty diversity or gender diversity or even race diversity. It's just they're all the same geek. It's an interesting so are these proxies for trait diversity that that women express these traits more than men, and therefore to get a balance of traits we should have a balance of genders? The answer is, well, no, they're like, you can have trait diversity without gender diversity, and you might not have trait diversity with gender diversity, right? So it's not a one-to-one perfect correlation. So we'll discuss all of that tomorrow. But yeah, so this semester you guys have to work out also, what are you going to focus on a bit more, right? Because as you go into the integration project and you look at the VR, and so VR games and mobile, the projects that you kind of start doing research on now might end up being what you do your specialization in, which could then end up in being your thesis, right? So this can be the start of saying, okay, I'm interested in this area of wearables, or I'm interested in this area of games, or I'm interested in this aspect of computer science. Or in your integration, I'm interested in the back end of how to integrate with the services, or I'm interested in big data analysis. So like what you pick now could end up being what you do your thesis on, right? So now is when you start thinking about those sort of things. Okay? So if there are no other questions, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Do you have any questions about that stuff? Any questions about the course, the semester? You want to? I think we should probably start integration project earlier. Yeah. So then mid-February. But nothing else? Right. Okay. So it'll be a big day tomorrow.
Just don't start the integration course the Global Game Jam weekend.
Right. No. We'll try and avoid the Global Game Jam weekend. We'll start on the Monday afterwards. No. But the Global Game Jam should be over at Hammer again. Are you planning going?
2 of us, I think, going to Bergen instead.
Ah, nice.
So
yep.
Then it's
a bit of a trip.
Fun to get back to Monday morning.
No, that's a bit harsh. So yeah, but okay, I've gone all blurry. Okay, so we'll see you guys tomorrow, and yep, check online. We'll be sending emails and notifications.